Hi, thanks for coming out on the rainy night. I'm just going to say a little bit about the book and then I'm going to read a little bit and then we'll talk. Um, so, it may not seem like it, but I think of this book as sort of a mystery, and that's because I approached it. That's what got me interested in it, was to see what I thought was a mystery when I looked at American women and American mothers in particular. And I should say that the book is about more than moms, despite the title. It is about women, it's about men, and it's about women and men without children sometimes. And I talk about that it's basically an issue of caretaking, and we'll get to that. But anyway, what got me into this was looking internationally. And this was 4 years ago, 4.5 actually, right before I had any children of my own. And I had been writing about these issues for years, but I had been asked to write a book on these issues, and I started thinking about how we are different as a country and compared to other countries. And as I read and learned more and more, it got weirder and weirder because we stick out in lots of ways. When you look at us in the world, we have incredibly high rates of working women here. So women work a lot and they work a lot of hours. We have one of the highest rates of full-time working women in the world. And the other thing is that we have a lot of children. And really our fertility rate is 2.1, which is replacement. And you think, well, that's not so high. But it is actually high when you compare it to the rates of fertility in other rich countries. More than 90 countries have had their fertility rates drop below replacement in the past few years, actually the past few decades, as women have entered the workforce. And it's sort of understood as a reflection of the difficulty of working and parenting at the same time. So we have a lot of kids compared to these other countries, and we work a lot. And the third thing is the weirdest thing, which is that we do all this with so much less public support than other countries. And by this I mean paid time off, paid family leave, but also paid vacation, flexible work options like the ability to work part-time, and childcare. We have so much, we spend so much less on childcare than many other countries that are like us in other ways. So just like people talk about individual women and they say, how does she do it? How does she pull it off? I wanted to ask how we as a country pull it off. How is this possible? And so I was trying to be a diligent journalist and digging up numbers, and there are numbers to be dug up. A lot of it is measurable, I think. I think in the shortest answer to how do we do it is that we do it with a lot of misery. I think that it's a really difficult thing to be done, and I think that's reflected in statistics like like the fact that American women sleep less than 6 hours a night, American mothers, I should say. But you can relate all sorts of data to this huge overarching problem. If you look at time use studies, mothers don't have a lot of leisure time. And then if you look at poverty rates, I think this phenomenon has a lot to do with the fact that we have very, very high rates of women's poverty and children's poverty in this country. So all these things are in the book, and I talk about them a lot, but another part of the story, and equally important part of the book, is the less quantifiable part, which is to say that on the meta level, here are these numbers that kind of describe what's going on, but another part of it is really only relatable in stories. And that's where I felt like I could really contribute, because that's one of my favorite things to do, is find stories and find people and listen to them and find out what's happened to them. So I would say more than half of the book is stories of people who can answer the question, what do you do when your child care falls through when you're on your way to work with your 1-year-old in the back of the car? What do you do when you have quadruplets and you can't afford a babysitter and you have to go to work? What do you do when you really, really need income, but your wages don't actually pay for childcare or cover your childcare costs? Anyway, I get into sort of the nitty-gritty part of it, the real details, the real-life details that you can't ever quite capture unless you're talking about someone's real life. But then also the emotional part of it, which is, I think, really hard to capture in any other way except by talking to people and hearing their stories. So I do have little bits I'm going to read that give a sense of some of what's in the book. I mean, over the most of the book is describing this war, which, I'll be the first to admit there's nothing flying at my head. It's not a war in the literal sense, and it's a flourish, but it's a little bit tabloid for what the book actually is. But the truth is that I think that the lack of support does amount to a form of hostility, and I think that this book, it makes the case for that. So I don't know how I'm going to read, and I have to go up there, right? Okay, here we go. Oops.
Got it.
Okay. Okay. Oh, no. Technical issues. More technical issues. There we go. Okay, sorry. Okay. I said earlier that this is not all about women, and it's not all about moms. And to that point, I'm just going to read a little bit. This section follows the discussion of some women who were fired after becoming pregnant. Okay? Meanwhile, a pregnant Sharon Walsh found herself showered with hostility rather than baby gifts in her Minneapolis office. Walsh, who sold and renewed service contracts on scanners at the National Computer Systems Company, developed borderline gestational diabetes during pregnancy and had to ask for time off to go to the doctor. Although her condition soon stabilized, from that point on, Walsh felt antagonism radiating from her boss, who scrutinized Walsh's hours, referred to Walsh's son as the sickling because he suffered from violent allergic reactions, and tacked out sick child signs up in Walsh's office when she had to stay home with him. On one occasion, after Walsh fainted in the office because of the stress, her boss stopped by her cubicle to warn her that she better not be pregnant again. She wasn't, but she left her job anyway. As much as these women needed and wanted their income, the problem goes well beyond the simple loss of jobs and money. Workers in these situations are often the target of palpable anger, as if their efforts to both work and care for children are not simply a potential obstacle to business, but a deliberate affront to the gender order. You can hear the free-floating nastiness seep out in the reprimand Devorah Gartner received for asking for time off. She comes up in an earlier chapter. It's there, too, in the condescending comments from Tracy Lustbloss, who regularly made blonde barbs, as in, "You're being a blonde again today, Tracy," and asked why Lust's husband, Jerry, wasn't going to take care of her. In Minneapolis, Walsh's boss even threw a phone book at her desk once, demanding that Walsh find a pediatrician who was open after work hours. Yet even when projectiles are flying at their heads, or perhaps particularly when projectiles are flying at their heads, most people are so focused on ducking, they're unlikely to absorb the fact that their problems extend far beyond them. While it may be impossible not to take such an assault personally, the hostility toward Walsh is connected to the anger directed toward other mothers, indeed toward caretakers of all sorts. Although men are less likely to get caught in the phone book crossfire mentioned previously because they're less likely to be responsible for a sick child, It's clear that when they do take on the care of others, they can incite a variation of the fury and bigotry that female workers are more likely to encounter.